Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare. In first grade, I decided to discover all the words that rhyme with duck in alphabetical order. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. What is the dumbest thing you have gotten into trouble for? Number 1. Commenter. I got detention when I was about 7 for sneezing in class. The teacher came over to our table and asked who made the noise, and the rest of the table pointed to me. My mom came in and spoke to the teacher after she asked why I'd been in detention that day. Person B. I never understood elementary school teachers who expect little kids to be perfectly quiet 100% of the time. My little brother got sent to the office probably 20 times one year for having hiccups in class. Granted, his hiccups sound pretty fake, but he's a smart enough kid to know that he shouldn't have faked hiccups in that class after getting sent to the office the first 5 times. I've personally been sent to the office for laughing, briefly, at a joke in a book during quiet reading time and kicking a chair, which my teacher classified as defacement of school property. Number 2. My high school had a no facial hair rule. They didn't seem to have a problem with sideburns though, so I would just grow huge sideburns in rebellion, basically a beard with a gap shaved in between and no mustache. Most teachers acknowledged it as a loophole and didn't care, but one teacher would always try to find me and send me home to shave. It amazes me thinking back on how much time she spent on the most harmless of rebellious teenage acts. Number 3. I was once working as a maintenance guy in an apartment building, temp work. I got my hand crushed in an elevator door, and while I was sitting in the lobby waiting for them to call an ambulance, a resident asked me what happened and I told them. Apparently, I was implying the facilities were unsafe and worrying a resident, which is grounds for firing. Number 4. When I was about 9, my classroom was the school's computer room, which had 30 computers and no ventilation. It was the middle of June and the entire class was melting. I stood up and turned on the tiny desk fan in the corner. Our teacher came into the room and demanded to know who turned on the fan. I stood up. She yelled at me saying that it was dangerous and sent me to the corridor, which is roughly the equivalent of detention to a 9-year-old. Number 5. In 2nd grade, I was partnered to do an assignment with a girl I wasn't particularly fond of. She sat a couple tables over. The assignment wasn't difficult, and I could do it on my own, so that's what I started to do. She made no move to come over to me, I made no move to go over to her, and a little while later she started working with the teacher helper lady. The teacher came to me and asked me why I wasn't working with her, and being a relatively shy kid at the time, I didn't know what to say. I was sent to the thinking chair where I bawled my eyes out, and subsequently transferred to another class the next day. Also, in 1st grade, I had a thing for coloring everything rainbow, scribbled every color in the crayon box all over. This was all fine, until I was given a picture of a street with shops lining it, colored it the same way, and the teacher got upset and made me redo it. Colored it black and gray, and this was okay. Number 6. In 6th grade I was really shy and didn't have any friends, no one seemed to like me. Anyway, I was in science class and the teacher kept yelling at me to be quiet. I wasn't talking. I got yelled at about 3 times and started to cry. I pulled my hands off my desk into my lap and dropped my eraser. I bent down to pick it up and the teacher ran across the classroom into my desk and started screaming at me for interrupting the classroom. Even though I didn't have any friends, the entire classroom stood up for me. The teacher apologized, but I still felt like shit. Number 7. This is something that I was told about by my parents, as I was too young to remember now. They went into my school to pick me up from kindergarten, and my teacher pulled my parents aside to tell them that I had done something that day. My mom told me her first thought was that I had gotten in a fight, or did something terrible. My teacher proceeds to tell them my problem. The teacher had apparently asked my class about what we all wanted to do when we grew up. Everybody else gave stereotypical answers like fireman, astronaut, etc. When it was my turn, I said that I wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, so I could be with my kids. This disturbed or angered my kindergarten teacher enough to pull my parents aside after school. Number 8. In 1st grade, I decided to start learning how to read Egyptian hieroglyphs. I got a book from the library, started teaching myself, and was actually learning at a rapid pace. I could easily read inscriptions after just 2 weeks, an hour or 2 every day. I would sometimes read in class. My teacher, Mrs. Summers, is a bitch. But her husband was a genuine chemical engineer who would give the class demonstrations. He was always awesome, got wind of this, and had a meeting with my parents, where she told them about how learning another language can be detrimental to my development, and that this was obviously just another example of attention-seeking behavior that must be stopped. From then on, she had strict control over everything I was allowed to check out from the school library, and she didn't let me read anything. And that, ladies and germs, is how a first-grade teacher literally did everything possible to compel a child to stop reading. Oh, and she also gloated about how all she had to do was call my parents and lie to get me punished. She literally said, "I just have to lift my phone, call your house, and say anything. I could lie if I wanted to and that's it. And I know what your father will do to you." Number 9. When I was 11, I was at my sister's high school graduation. The ceremony was held outside in the football stadium. As the ceremony droned on, my mom had set her camera case by her feet. She accidentally hit it with her foot and it fell below the bleachers. So I volunteered to retrieve it. When I reached the underside of the bleachers and grabbed the case, this old woman started screaming, "Thief, thief." It was loud enough for most people to hear and slightly threw off the graduation speaker. Well, she also attracted the attention of a cop and he grabbed me by the shoulder and brought me from under the bleachers. I had to lead him to my mom and he tried to convince her that he caught me stealing. But my mom had asked me to get it and she ripped the cop for interrupting the ceremony for her. The cop apologized and the old woman had followed us and my mom flicked her off. Then, when they left, she yelled at me for causing trouble. Number 10. My sister, 4 years my senior, was trying to catch bees in a Kinder Surprise toy container. I was standing behind her saying this is a bad idea. She got stung, ran inside, told our mother I'd been the one trying to catch bees and that she got stung trying to stop me, and I got smacked. I brought it up years later, and both mother and sister were mortified. Number 11. In first grade I decided to discover all the words that rhyme with duck in alphabetical order. After not getting very far, my mumblings were outed by some kid who shouted he said the F word. My teacher freaked out and sent me to the back of the class. I sat there, distraught, wondering what I had done wrong, and which word was the F word they spoke of. I was not the sharpest kid while in first grade. Number 12. Commenter. In kindergarten, while watching Bambi, everyone got really sad when his mom got shot. When I was confused by this and said, "Don't worry, it's not real. It's just a cartoon," I was sent to the corner for timeout. Person B. When I was 5 or 6, I was watching Bambi at a friend's house and, after that scene, her mother paused the tape and asked if we had any questions about what we had just seen. I responded with, "What's a thicket?" And she flipped out and accused me of being insensitive and rude. Number 13. In 6th grade I had bronchitis and would occasionally have these intense coughing fits that were really hard to stop. So one day during silent reading, one of these coughing fits comes on, and I try my best to silence it, but it goes on for 10 to 15 seconds. Well, my teacher got pissed and threatened to give me detention for playing the coughing game. Nothing came out of it, but I was a tender 6th grader and getting yelled at freaked me out. Number 14. Commenter. I got detention for changing the wallpaper on a school computer. My school sucked. Person B. I was banned from the computers for browsing the hard drive in the command prompt instead of the GUI. Person C. I have actually had something similar to that happen to me. Me and my friend were looking at everything in the command prompt, and a teacher had a mini heart attack and told us to stop hacking. Luckily, she didn't throw reason and logic out the window and listen, so there was no banning of computers. Number 15. In high school I was working with a friend on a PowerPoint project, and he got sick so he couldn't come to school. Well, the PowerPoint was saved on his school account so I couldn't work on it. To solve this problem he gave me his password, and I started working on the PowerPoint. About 45 minutes later the librarian came over and asked me whose account I was on. I told her I was on my friend's account so I could work on a project. She said, "Oh okay," and went back to her desk. Soon after that I left to go home, and on the way out the librarian asked me if I was doing anything inappropriate on the computer. I said no, which was completely true. I wasn't even on the internet, and left. Then the next day about halfway through first period I got called to the director's office. So I go and he starts yelling at me for hacking into other students' accounts. I tried to explain what actually happened, but he would have none of it. He then told me to leave so he could think of a punishment. About 2 hours later he called me back to his office and said I would lose all computer privileges for the rest of the school year. This was the worst thing that could have happened to me because I was about 4 classes that required me to use computers. So here I am worrying about how I'm going to be able to graduate on time, because it is now impossible to pass half my classes. So I ended up transferring to a new school so I could finish my engineering and programming classes. Number 16. When I was in 6th grade, I was tired so I yawned. I put my hand over my mouth, but I didn't go out of my way to stifle it. My teacher flipped out and said, "If this is too boring for you, you can take your chair and go sit out in the hall." I was never one to get angry at authority when I was a kid, but I got really pissed off about this. What? I wasn't allowed to be tired.
Number 17.
I was charged with truancy. I was actually brought to court, sat in front of a judge, was convicted and almost sent to juvie because I skipped school. Got 2 years probation. I was told it was the first case of truancy actually being brought to court in 50 years in Ontario. Well, the reason I skipped school. Kid I'd been bickering with said he was going to stab me. Next day, before I saw him, he'd been caught with a big hunting knife in his backpack. Kid was serious about killing me. What's more, the school deemed the knife for other things, completely dismissing his threat to me, and not even giving him a slap on the wrist. Zero tolerance policy, my big fat ass. I skipped for about a week before my mother noticed. When she found out what happened, she pulled me from the school and tried to have me transferred. The school kept saying that it was not a good enough reason to transfer me, and if she kept me out of school any longer they'd have to charge me with truancy. They did. Finally my mother just moved to the other side of the city, taking me out of their district so she could put me into another school. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.